get my microphone off first. All right, let's see here. All right, looks like I am streaming. I got to check a few things. For some reason, it's saying my broadcast is not available. What's going on here? And first, it's been a while since I've done one of these. Really, I've just been focusing on my own life, my own spirituality, but obviously I live it kind of in the public in many ways as I share my various journeys. I think I'm live. I think y'all can see me. I'm not sure. It's saying the broadcast is not available, and I am not sure why. It says everything's going, it says I'm live, so I'm just going to go ahead and go. I'm just going to go ahead and go and tell you this story because I think it's important, and I really appreciate all the support I had while we were out on this pilgrimage, and I felt it was really important to talk to people about the Charlie Kirk Memorial when I went there, some of the things I posted and said, and the subsequent journey to San Francisco, to Platina, to the Fort Ross pilgrimage, and just the amazing things that I saw God do. But not only that, how He educated me in how deceptive this religion of the future that Fr Seraphim Rose spoke about in his book, Orthodoxy and Religion of the Future. If you haven't got this book, you should get it. And obviously, with the help of Nick Hinton, who's on the journey with me, and some other people, some not quite as helpful, but they helped in other ways, opened my eyes. And I saw how perfect me going to the Charlie Kirk Memorial was, and embracing and being in that environment and seeing this conglomeration of people that were coming in to make Charlie a martyr, and then the subsequent pilgrimage where God corrected me, because I'm telling you, this pilgrimage was the hardest thing I could say I've ever done in my Christian life, in terms of just getting spiritually beat to death and just seeing how wretched I am and how much I need Jesus. And so, because people had been asking me, and it was too much to really share in just post, so I'm going to tell the story, and hopefully it blesses some people. One of the things I got while I was at Platina, though, was like the Orthodox word. I got these really super old copies, some like the year after Fr Seraphim reposed. And I'm going to read a story about St. John of Shanghai here in a little bit when I tell about my pilgrimage to his. But, obviously many of you know, and let me see if this is getting better. What is going on here? I'm not sure why this says I'm broadcasting, but that it's not available. And I can't see anybody's comments either. I might have to end this stream and try it again another time. Give me just a second here. Oh, no. Okay, I see it. I'm live. Okay. So those who have been following me for a while saw that this pilgrimage that I went on had been planned for months. One night I called some friends and some, Twitter friends, people I've met online, and invited some people to go on this pilgrimage because, my journey, as many of you have seen that have followed me over the years, has been a tremendous struggle, a struggle out of my sin, a struggle in understanding orthodoxy and finding a spiritual father. Oh, hey, I can see comments. Okay, you can talk to me and I can see it. This I'm using a new program, so this is new for me. And I see this problem in orthodoxy all over the place. And recently there was even some a podcast out about the future of orthodoxy, after 2030, and how we're getting these influx of converts, and how the church right now is not equipped to handle that, right? We're in a priest crisis, they say. Now, I trust in the Lord. I know these things are going to handle themselves. But, my journey has been normal for some and abnormal for others, and that Like one of the brothers that went on this pilgrimage with me right into Orthodoxy. He got an amazing spiritual father and had this guidance. I went for 6 years before I even had a priest begin to properly catechize me. And so, I was moving in a place. I was in seminary, uh, semi-seminary at the Antiochian House of Studies, and just realized that the priesthood was not the direction I was going at this time. I felt extremely lost in how to move forward in my orthodoxy. We were trying to start a mission up here in the mountains that got kind of crazy. The whole situation. If you're going to try to do missions as hello Jess, as as an Orthodox, you better be ready for that spiritual battle. And I just felt like in the beginning of my growth, my real true growth in Orthodoxy began with the pilgrimage to see Father Seraphim Rose. And I thought, I want to go on this pilgrimage and I want to invite some people that I care about and some people that I've known online, which now I would say I would not recommend that. You're taking some interesting risks, and I'll share a little bit about that. But, that was all part of the growth in the journey. And so we had this planned when the Charlie Kirk assassination happened. And, during that time period, some of my posts really offended some people because I was all over the place. And I know I was. That moment in history was very shocking for me. It's like over the past year, couple years, we've just seen these amazing tragedies like mass shootings, like a masked man shooting politicians in Minnesota. And these things just streamline through so quickly, but nothing like the Charlie Kirk assassination. And it really threw me for a loop about how our country truly is in trouble, right? We're in trouble because we've rejected God as a nation. We're in trouble because we've called evil good and good evil and had years of the promotion of evil as the government promotion of evil to where, many people were saying that we were about to collapse. Like many, seeing the rise of MAGA and Trump and all this, I began to have some hope, but, now I think I've been correct in this. Not that I don't want to be civically responsible or have an impact on my community or society, but I'm realizing more and more that these politicians, and I don't care who they are moving us towards this agenda that Father Seraphim Rose spoke about of this religion of the future. But either way, watching Charlie Kirk get assassinated in that manner, it really hurt my heart. And so I told my wife, I said, I'm going to go out to this memorial. I'm going to film it. The trip was extremely challenging, a lot of spiritual warfare, but I had applied for a press pass and I had gotten it. And I thought, okay, this is pretty amazing. I'm going to be able to go right down there in the middle of the memorial. I'm going to be able to film. I was extremely tired through the trip. I got very little sleep because like Secret Service got us in there to set up equipment at midnight. Then we had to sit outside for hours before we could go back in. So even that, the tiredness, the spiritual warfare kind of prepared my heart to receive some of this deception, right? Total deception. And I came from evangelicalism. I call it my period of the wilderness. And as you can see behind me, I graduated from Christian, wait, I'm doing it backwards. I don't know. There we go. Christian colleges, Liberty University, evangelical, bought and sold in that Christian system that is a form of godliness that denies the power. And so I still have a heart for evangelicals and people in that system, but I understand now why, people can't get victory in that place. It's a partial system. It's not the apostolic church. So walking into that situation was kind of nostalgic. And I found it interesting that like some of the worship leaders they had were the same ones that they've had for like 20 years. It's the same songs, that they're singing over and over and over. And it seems like in some sense evangelicalism is decaying into leftism, into sexual immorality and all sorts of crazy stuff. But the environment was very joyous in a sense. And I can say that while I was there and while I was filming, I truly, truly saw some moments of grace where people there were truly seeking Christ in an emotional way. Like, I couldn't deny that. Coming from evangelicalism, I got kind of wrapped up in it, and really through my own struggles in the church and how I felt like as Orthodox people. And, as I'm reading this, I wanted to share a pilgrimage that happened back in the 80s where they were like engaging the culture. They were talking about, how film and art is impacting people. Like, Father Seraphim had this connection with the youth of that time where he was trying to get us to go out and combat the culture while he was developing an ascetic spirit and then spreading, Russian orthodoxy, the spirit of Valaam, Saint Herman, to bring that to America. And one of the things I read in here, it was in 1986. It was talking about how there weren't many books at that time in English, right? Like, we are truly in a golden period right now in Orthodoxy. Because even back then, 20 years ago, you had to know these other languages to even get some of these teachings. And that's what he was publishing, was to get this into the English language, into the hands of people so they could really get the mind of Orthodoxy, the heart of Orthodoxy. So I'm there and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm not going to join myself in prayer because that just wouldn't be Orthodox. I'm not going to pray and sing songs, but I began to film. And just the whole emotionalism of it all was pretty intense. At the same time, though, as many people pointed out, there was a lot of showmanship. There was a weird spirit of, like, this guy was just literally assassinated 11 days before, but people that were closest to him did not really seem that shaken to me. And there was like this flow of stars, these MAGA stars, and I started taking pictures, with them like an idiot. And they're interesting people, but I began to see that these people like Alex Stein, like, Valentina Gomez, like, you name one of the people that would be considered MAGA, they were there. And I began to see how challenged in my own faith, because I got drawn into the deception of this new religion that's coming. And we've seen it, right? In the martyrdom of Charlie Kirk. Not saying that what happened to him wasn't awful, but we're seeing this union among religions in their freedom shirts and their, do I believe Charlie Kirk loved Jesus? I believe he loved Jesus. I believe that any chance he got to share the gospel as an evangelical, as he knew it, that he was bold in the face of wickedness. But I honestly think that's why they took him out. Right? These people they're trying to prop up now are Timu replicas of what they wanted Charlie to be, but he was original. He was an original thinker. And he really wanted to see how he could change the culture among the youth. And so when I left that event, I felt challenged in some ways about how is Orthodoxy impacting America right now. If we seen the evangelical churches empty out, and everybody started streaming into the church, which we're seeing, like our church, that there's so many catechumens, like they're pretty soon they're going to start outnumbering the people that have been Orthodox and the cradle Orthodox, and you could see the problems that's going to create, because people are bringing this baggage into the church. They don't have time to sit under, good teachers. The priests are overworked. And we are about to hit into a crisis. But I started thinking, how can I impact the culture for Christ in a way that's orthodox? Because when I look at the past, like the church in Antioch, right? The church in Antioch had a hospital attached to it in the early days, right? All the poor people would go to the church in Antioch and they would lay outside the steps. And as the church people came out, they would ask for alms, and the church people would give them alms. They would help them. I think about, the catacomb Christians that used to go out and rescue babies that were being exposed, right? The Romans would just take old people and babies and throw them out in the wilderness to be eaten by wolves or starved to death. And the Christians would go save them and then raise them as Christians, or help these older people get to know the church in Christ before they died. And it started making the Romans mad. They started telling the Christians, we're gonna execute you as enemies of the state if you keep impacting our society this way. Or Boniface, how he went to Germany and chopped down their giant pagan tree. I seen this culture, Saint Simeon the Stylite, right? Like he sat on a pillar for 30 years. It's kind of crazy. I thought to myself, what if we didn't have a Charlie Kirk, but if we had a Stylite in this day and age that truly was an ascetic sitting on a pillar somewhere in America? I think it would change the world. That ascetic, true Holy Spirit, desert father experience. But we don't have that today. We don't have that today. And even the monasteries are struggling. I mean, you go to Mount Athos, it's full of pilgrims. There's cell phones everywhere. It's almost like a tourist attraction in some regards. They just started, restricting pilgrims. But anyways, that's where it began to challenge me. So my posts were all over the place, up and down. I'm like, how am I living my Christian life? Kind of infected by this emotionalism, which is going to be one of the key factors of this religion of the future. And so I sat in that for a couple weeks. And the period leading up to actually the pilgrimage was some of the most intense spiritual warfare I have experienced it in a long time. And I think, God understood my weaknesses, and me even inviting people kind of stuck me to where I couldn't back out. I couldn't. There were a few times I was like, I'm not going. Like, I am suffering right now. I am hurting in my life. The day before I was supposed to leave for California, I got hit with a medical emergency, and I ended up in the VA hospital, and they told me I had appendicitis, they believed, and they may have to do emergency surgery. And I'm sitting there in the hospital going, this is the beginning of my pilgrimage, right? I'm getting beat up. What was I thinking? And then they came back, did a CAT scan. They're like, no, you're fine. We don't know what's wrong with you. And they discharged me. And I'm like, wow. So I get on the plane, and one of the people I was meeting was a friend of mine that I've known for a very long time. We were actually evangelical street preachers together back in the day. When I became Orthodox, he actually excommunicated me from his life. And he was like, you're going to hell. You're an idolater. This church is wicked. And he flew across the country to try to save me. And then he didn't talk to me for like 3 years. And then one day he called me up and he said, I was like, why is this guy calling me? It's been like 3 years. And he said, well, I'm a catechumen. And I was like, what? And so now we're true brothers. He's a subdeacon in ROCOR. So his priest gave him permission to come out with me, and he was going to serve at St. John's Cathedral in San Francisco, which he got an opportunity to after getting beat up like the rest of us. But he was coming. So prior to, we were just going to go venerate St. John, go venerate, Father Seraphim. I had a lot of questions, struggling about, my spiritual life, what the Lord wanted me to do since I stopped school. Wasn't going to move towards the priesthood any longer until I saw some change and growth in my life and felt like I needed a spiritual father that was a little stronger than what I was receiving from my parish priest, which he, was supportive of because he was a new priest in a big church and was just struggling to get to know people. He didn't have a lot of time to really hone in on my spiritual life. So I'm thinking, okay, Lord, that's one of the things I'm seeking is direction on this healing that needs to occur in my life. Because, I take the idea of the priesthood very seriously. I have seen and had happened, things happen to me when I have approached holy things in a manner that not where I wasn't right, I guess is the only way to say it. I approached it like an evangelical, with sin and unrepentance in my heart, and literally got sick. That happened to me the first time I went to St. Anthony's in Arizona. I was a mess. I was drinking. I was desperate. I was going to cry out for help and for the saints' intercessions of Elder Ephraim and St. Joseph the Hesychist, and walked into that monastery and got brutally sick. Like, just a short sickness, but I recognized afterwards, I slept for like 15 hours, and when I woke up, I realized, I came into this place not recognizing holy things, right? And so, in my journey studying in the seminary, I thought, I can't do this until I see a greater and true fruit in my life and have a spiritual father that can really guide me, because I'm not trying to condemn myself. I'm not trying to go into the priesthood and get completely um, condemned by my inability to live the Christian life as a priest should. So a lot of turmoil, a lot of change, and this pilgrimage was important to figure that out. So here I am, leaving the Charlie Kirk thing. My mind is a mess. I'm I'm seeing all the madness that's happening in our country. I'm seeing and posting towards Nick Fuentes. I don't even know why now. I don't know if that was part of my grieving process. To see that he was put in a spot now where he's gonna accelerate his vision of what Christianity in America is, that I think is contrary to the Orthodox position. I mean, I really think that no one who is Orthodox should even follow Nick Fuentes seriously. He's not even Orthodox, right? You see all these Orthodox people promoting him and propping him up. But anyways, so trying to find my place, right, as an American, trying to understand how to engage my political environment in a Trump presidency or a Biden presidency, where they get us trapped in this either or. You're either MAGA or you're a leftist, you're either a fascist or you're a communist. They've become so radically swinging in every direction that you can't be moderate. If you even try to be moderate, then they throw you in one side or the other. And how can I be a good citizen? How can I build this country for my family? How can I be a good Orthodox Christian? These were the questions that were coming up in my mind and life. So anyways, I find out we were supposed to meet on a Monday, but I find out about this Fort Ross pilgrimage that I highly recommend. Didn't even know what it was. This is part of my own Orthodox ignorance, but apparently Fort Ross was the first location. St. Tikhon was there. I think St. Innocent was there, and it was the first place where the liturgy was served on the lower American continent, right outside of Alaska. So a very sacred place for Orthodoxy, and I was like, hey, I want to go check out this pilgrimage. So I agreed to go 2 days early and meet some people that I didn't know. And I got to be careful because I don't want to shame anybody about what happened, but some of this is key to understand the spiritual warfare of this thing. That was pretty outrageous and pretty amazing. And so we're going to meet some people at Fort Ross. I fly in a couple days early, and instantly right off the bat, I'm with people that I don't know. We're trying to get to know each other. We're all in our own place seeking the Lord, and I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing? I flew into the situation previously out of the hospital, I felt like sick in my spirit, sick in my heart, just wanting to receive the intercession of the saints. So, we're driving out to Fort Ross, and it's messy, and I'm thinking, what am I doing here? What am I doing here with strange people? What am I doing here away from my wife and family? Just praying, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Trying to follow through, because I knew other people were coming on Monday, then another person was coming on Thursday, and so I couldn't back out because I invited them. And so the Lord kind of stuck me into that situation. It was very triggering for me. Many of you know that I was an activist for many years, really engaged against people that were trafficking in the Department of Children and Family Services, and made some severe enemies. And so sometimes I get a little freaked out when I'm around strangers, because I've had people try to come into my life and hurt me and try to set me up. I'm not kidding. When I was fighting for my kids many years ago and trying to change legislation for incentivizing taking kids away from families. And so I'm with these strange people. We get to Fort Ross, and that experience by itself was like the first taste of freshness in the whole experience, right? So we drive out to the coast. One of the guys that was with us was just super chatty. Like, it was like Fed talk to me. I mean, like nonstop for 3 hours. He was just talk, asking me everything I did. Why are you doing that? What's your name? Where are you from? What's your wife's name? And I started getting kind of paranoid, right? I was like, who is this guy that I just met that's asking me 80 million questions about my life, about my past, about. So I'm just trying to be quiet, and I'm like, I just need to get to Fort Ross. One of the other persons that was with me, he was just sleeping. He was like checked out from this guy as well, and struggling with his own stuff. And so we get to Fort Ross, and I'm like, man, I need to break away. I just need some time to pray to the Lord, to remember why I'm here. And this lady comes up out of the blue, and she's like, hey, if you're singing in the OCA choir, you need to come over here and practice right now. Like, I didn't plan to sing in the OCA choir. I had no idea who she was. I have no idea why she approached me, but I thought, here's my moment of grace. And so I went over there to practice with the choir. Next thing, the Lord blessed us to where we were kind of in the tents in there with all the hierarchs. It was baking hot, but we got put kind of under a tent. And for those 4 hours, it was like a 4-hour hierarchical liturgy. And it was probably one of the most beautiful liturgies I've ever experienced, besides on Mount Athos. And to have the Russian Rokor Church and the OCA Church with all their hierarchs come together, and just to watch how they moved and to see the grace on them. Like, I know there's a lot of people that haven't even probably been in a hierarchical liturgy or met hierarchs. I've met younger Orthodox that, kind of scorn the priest and the bishops in all their accoutrements, and, they just don't understand it coming from like evangelical background like me. But being around those men and seeing the grace in their face and seeing their kindness towards people, and to watch these bishops stand, some of them stand for 4 hours in the beating sun in full vestments, not able to move, right? Just enduring suffering while praising God. Then we had the Russian choir over here, we had the OCA choir, and we were like singing back and forth, like battling choirs. It was like a taste of heaven. And so, that was kind of the first moment of God's grace for me. And then we, processed, which I'm all for processions. I'm like, we should have more processions in America. Some churches I've been at, when we have processions, they kind of go around inside, the narthex, and then back, by the out front of the altar, or they go around the church. But like, this was like a mile-long procession with hundreds of people singing songs, Russians, Americans. It was so beautiful. And I'm telling you, next year when they do this, if you can go, you should go. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to take my family this time. But so I got a break. I got a break from the initial insanity. I got a break from this person that was like asking me all these weird questions and kind of triggering me a little bit because of my past, my hypersensitivity to not trusting people. And so it was a long day, but it was a beautiful day. So we get back in the car, and we have to drive all the way back to San Francisco. And again, same thing starts happening. This guy starts hammering, talking, asking me questions. Well, then he starts doing weird things, like asking me about guns and asking me if I like guns. And that, like, red flag for me right away. I'm like, what is this guy doing? And so by the time we got to San Francisco, I was pretty annoyed. And this guy had shared that he went to prison. So I was kind of like, hey, why are you talking to me about guns if you went to prison? Like, you're a felon. You shouldn't even have guns. I was like, didn't you know that's a federal crime? And all of a sudden he started backpedaling. He's like, oh, no, I was just joking. I was just trying to get you to like me. But, based on my past experience, when other people had come into our groups when we were doing political activism, to me, it smelled like a setup. And I'm not saying it was now. I'm just saying it was weird. And it was part of the spiritual battle that we were engaged in. I'm like, why does it seem like this guy is trying to set me up, right? And then, one of the people that I was with, they have kind of been engaged to where they had been surveilled, and the feds were watching them, and they were involved with AI and all sorts of stuff, and had their own level of, paranoia about those things, because they came into orthodoxy getting away from like this religion of the future type of AI, UFO, crazy people stuff, like demonic stuff. So I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if this guy's here for him. I don't know if he's here for me. I don't even know what the issue is. But I just kept trying to be gracious and try to get away from the situation. Like, they had a different hotel room than me. So I was like, let's just get to my hotel room. So finally I kind of snapped. I was like, don't talk to me about this stuff. Like, I don't want to talk about guns. I don't care about guns. I don't want to talk about prison. And so he was like, okay, I'm sorry. Let me take you to dinner. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to continue to be gracious, continue to be gracious, continue to be gracious. I'm triggered all over the place. So we go to dinner, and I kind of get angry at this guy and start confronting him about, just his behavior and some of the things that he was doing. And he gets up and he says, I'm going to go smoke a cigarette. And he walks away. So I'm talking to the other guy that's with me, and I just got this quickening in my spirit. And this happened to me in times before, and I thought, this guy is recording us. And so I'm talking to the other guy, and I'm like, hey, this guy is recording our conversations. And he was like, what are you talking about? You're paranoid. So I pick up the guy's hat, and there's a phone sitting there. So I start talking to the phone. I'm like, hey, I know you're recording, and you're busted. And so the other guy's looking at me. He didn't know me either. So he's like, okay, who is this crazy veteran paranoid human being that thinks we're being recorded? So the other guy walks in, and I just confront him, and I said, why are you recording us? You're recording us, aren't you? And he says, yes. And I lost it. I was just like, all my past paranoia came up. The other guy was like, what are you doing? Like, we're like, are we getting set up? Like, what is happening here? Why are we getting attacked in this manner? So we split up. And I told the people that came out there with me, I said, I don't want to talk to you guys. Like, this is a huge breach of anything. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what you're trying to do or why you're recording me. Totally inappropriate. I couldn't even deal with it in a patient and kind way because it freaked me out so bad. So I go back to my motel room, call my wife, and I'm like, hey, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why people are recording me and asking me questions about guns and all this other stuff. But if anything happens to me, I just wanted to let you know. I sent her the names of the people and was like, just here they are. So the next day I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to be around these people anymore. And I, just kind of dwelling in my self-righteousness and go to the OCA cathedral where they're going to have another, hierarchical liturgy. And one of the guys that was there, because he kind of felt responsible because this guy had come with him, and he was shocked, or at least he appeared to be shocked. I was like, just come to the church. Let's just go pray together. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. I'm just going to go to church, and you guys are welcome to join me. Or I said he was. The other guy said he wasn't welcome to join me. So we get in their church, never been there, and lo and behold, as we're sitting there praying, and I could not get this situation out of my mind. We're sitting there praying, and they come out to do the gospel reading, and it couldn't have been any larger of a rebuke, because I'm like sitting in my self-righteousness. I'm all mad. This guy was recording me, and I'm this, and they're trying to set me up and whatever. And the gospel reading was, love your enemies. Do good to those who want to do evil to you, like those who spitefully use you. And Bishop, I think it was Bishop Daniel is his name. He's one of the California bishops. I didn't know him personally, but he's given the homily, and he's basically saying, like, if you can't be kind to people that hurt you, and right then I turned around, I looked at the other guy, and we just started laughing, because I was like, you couldn't set this up, right? Like, God is really trying to get into a wound in my heart about how I interact with people that I feel are a threat to me, and how to love those that seem impossible to love because they hurt you, right? So he gives this whole homily on, like, Jesus was loving people as they were killing him on the cross, and you can't even love your neighbor. And so totally convicted, tears in my eyes. I turned to the other guy and I said, call the other guy. Tell him if he wants to come, I don't care anymore. I don't care if he was recording. I don't care what his intentions are. He's welcome to come. Like, let's just move forward. And half of me was like, you're insane. What are you doing? And the other half was like, this was such a clear message from the Lord to teach me how to love people in difficult situations and to address my own wounds that, I felt like if I didn't take that advice, if I didn't listen to the bishop, then it was just going to kill the pilgrimage right there. Like, it had been rough from day one, then I get a little breath of fresh air, and then that happened, which I don't know. I mean, ask yourselves, if you were with strange people in a big city that you didn't know and had political enemies and caught somebody recording you, how would you respond? Like, it was insane. So needless to say, I told the guy on the phone, I said, I forgive you, you're welcome to come. He had already taken off. He was going to Platina. So we were like, okay, I guess he's not going to stay with us. And so my other friend wasn't even supposed to be there until the following day. To the following day. And so the following day comes, my friend shows up. Nick is there, Nick Hinton. And, he's going through his own struggle. I'm going through my own struggle. My friend's there. I tell him what happened. I call the other people that are supposed to come on the pilgrimage, and I told him, hey, I want to let you guys know what happened, not because I'm trying to rat on this guy, but because I don't know what his intention was. I don't even know what this was about. But if you don't want to come, that's fine. I understand, but I want to, let you know what's happening. And one of the guys was just like, this Volt, like, God wills it. Let's do this. I'm not afraid. And I was like, this is the craziest thing I've experienced. So I'm like, all right, we're all going to continue to go on this journey. So I pick up my friend. He was like, what do you think happened? I was like, I have no idea. I just know that I felt like the Lord rebuked me and I'm supposed to just love my way through this thing. So that night, Nick was going through his own struggle and I didn't know Nick at all. We were getting to know each other, but he asked us, he said, look, can we go to Dunlap, California? And I was like, what's in Dunlap? And he was like, Mother Markella at the, I think it's called the Life Giving Spring Monastery. And in my heart, I was thinking, no, I don't want to go to Dunlap. Like, we got to go venerate St. John. That night we had went and venerated St. John and went in there and we were just in tears and the whole situation was just blown up in my heart. And I was just pleading with St. John to intervene and to guide us. And then the next day we were going to go to liturgy. So the next day we went to liturgy at St. John's Cathedral. And, I was sitting outside just kind of trying to figure all this out and if I should leave, but I was like, I can't leave my friend. And this priest comes up and he says, you guys are going to come have coffee with me. So we go have coffee with him and he's like grilling us, giving us his name, giving us some grace, praying on us. And Nick had shared with them, because we were asking Lord, should we go to Dunlop? Should we change our plans? It was 3 hours in the wrong direction. So we would have to drive 3 hours backwards and then the next day, 6 hours to Platina. And I'm like, is it really worth it? Like, why are we going to do this? But through the course of that meal, this priest confirmed, go to Dunlop. And I was like, okay, I am totally out of control of this whole situation. I am just a pilgrimage rider for sure here. And I was trying not to just control everything. So I told him, I guess we're going to Dunlop. So we get all geared up and take the 3-hour drive. And, because of the situation and the heaviness, it was heavy when we left San Francisco. My friend was trying to comfort me. I was still kind of triggered. Nick was freaking out about the situation in his own way. We kept going through our minds about why somebody would do that. He was sharing experiences with me of things that had happened to him when he was, with all that occult stuff and UFO stuff he was doing and some government stuff that happened to him. And I was sharing stuff with him of stuff that happened to me when I was doing my activism. So we were just freaking each other out, right? We're like, we don't know why this guy was here. But we know we're going to Mother Markella. And so the closer we got there, the more peaceful I began to feel. I had no idea who she is. And I'll tell you this right now. She is a God-bearing elder. They say she's clairvoyant. I would agree. I would agree with that from my own experience. This was the second oasis of grace in this chaos of unhealthiness, of sin, of craziness, and we get these little moments of peace. And so I said, okay. So I'm asking Nick, I was like, what do we do? This is a woman's monastery. I've never been here. And he's like, I don't know. I just know I need to see Mother Markella. I lost my baptism cross. I need to talk to her about it. I need some motherly grace right now. This has been so hard. And I was like, okay. So we're walking, we get in the motel room, or not a motel room, but it's like a ranch that you stay at. And we're walking up to our room and we're talking. And I hear this man and he goes, Seraphim? And I was like, did somebody just say my name? We didn't plan this. We went 3 hours backwards. And I look over and this archdeacon from the Greek diocese that I went to school with is sitting there at a table eating dinner outside. And just happened to be there when we walked up at 10 o'clock at night. And I was like, what is going on? So I looked at Nick and I said, okay, we're definitely supposed to be here. And I don't know what's happening, but something's happening. We're going to see what's happening. So we sit down and we talk and you're like, can we see can we see Mother Markella? And he's like, I don't know. we'll talk to him in the morning. And then so we go to bed and we get up in the morning and we go to breakfast. And so the guest keeper lady is there, the nun, is there. And so we tell her, hey, can we see Mother Markella? And she said, no, absolutely not. We were like, oh man, we just drove 3 hours the wrong way just to come see her. But we know, everybody that goes there wants to see her. So we were like, kind of dejected. She said, you should have said something when you came last night, but she's really busy and there's no way she's going to be able to see you. And we said, okay. And then that archdeacon had shared with me, and this was like another moment that just showed me that God was guiding this, in that he was giving us a tour of the monastery. And I asked him, I said, hey, what relics are here? And he said, oh, well, they have a big piece of of Saint Nicephorus the leper. And I was just like, what? Because I have commissioned a few icons for my little mini prayer chapel on my property. And one of them was of Saint Nicephorus the leper. His story really impacted me because me coming from a life of addiction, a life of suffering, was different than his, but I felt like, I was a leper in when I was an addict and living on the street, and how people treat you in that. And so felt very in tune with Saint Nicephorus, and I was like, oh, wow. Okay, so we're going to get to venerate Saint Nicephorus. We're not going to get to see that. So we asked her, so can we venerate the relics? And she was like, yeah, probably not. She said, in order for you guys to venerate the relics, the priest has to come up, and, it's already, it was already like 9 o'clock in the morning. And she was like, if you want to come to Vespers, you can, but none of that's going to happen. So we're like, okay, what are we doing? So I said, you know what? Us meeting this archdeacon, because we're eating with the nuns, and he's like, oh yeah, this is my friend, I went to school with them. So they kind of, it was like kind of like he was vouching for us. And I'm like, let's just stay. We'll go to Vespers, and then we'll leave after Vespers, and we'll drive as far as we can to Platina, no matter how hard it is, because we knew we had to be there the next day, right? We were already 2 days late, and we kept calling the monastery like, we're coming. And so we go up for our noon snack, and nobody's there. Nobody's there at the dinner to give us our food. So we're like, okay. We were hoping something was going to happen. Maybe we'd run into her, and be able to talk to her briefly. And so we're like, we don't know where anybody is. Well, this nun comes out and she said, hey, what are you guys doing here? And we're like, you guys told us to come up for a snack. And she said, no, you need to go down there and you need to help the nuns. They're waiting on you. So they had just gotten all these pallets in, and there were all these little nuns in their, black habits and out in the scorching sun of California, trying to use, like forklifts to move these big heavy things. And so we were like, oh yeah, well, we will absolutely help you. Okay, so we go down there, and the elder sisters tell the younger sisters, you guys get out of here, right? We don't want you around these men, because they were all like newer nuns or whatever. And so we sat out there all afternoon. We're moving these boxes, we're sweating, we're dying. They're all being kind to us, and they kept telling us, they were like, we had no idea how we were going to do this. We had no idea how to move all this stuff, because, they just weren't physically capable. They knew it was going to take a long time. And we're like moving these huge boxes full of wood and others, granite and all this stuff, helping, with the forklift, load it into trucks. And so they were just so overjoyed. They were like, you don't understand. We were praying to the saints to send somebody to help us, and then you guys showed up. So like, we're getting a little puffed up, right? We're like, see, we knew we were supposed to be here. And so we go to Vespers, and we're just like, this is the weirdest thing ever. Like, this is orthodoxy in action, living according to the Spirit, I guess, if you could call it that. And we're sitting in Vespers, and then all of a sudden, these nuns come in, they talk to Mother Markella, they tell her, no, these guys helped us out. She tells them to go get the priest. The priest comes out, we get to venerate St. Nicephorus. And I was just like, thank you, St. Nicephorus. That was an honor. And then we go to dinner, and we go to the bookstore first, and then one of the nuns, she kind of comes up to her, she goes, do you understand what happened here? She's like, the saints brought you guys here. And we're like, yeah, if you knew us, you probably wouldn't be saying that. We've had a rough trip, but we were glad that we could help. And I truly believe, if my friend wouldn't have been sitting there at that time to speak to them, they wanted him to help, but he had to take off. So we kind of filled in his place. And she said, you guys are going to stay after everybody leaves. And I forget how to pronounce it in the Greek, but Mother Markella is going to see you all. And we were like, what? I thought that wasn't going to happen. So I was kind of like, okay, she's, I'd barely seen her. I didn't even know what she looked like, really. And, Nick knew her and he really wanted her blessing. But in the morning prayer, she was kind of in and out and didn't really, kind of looked at us like she kind of kept staring at me. But she wouldn't say anything to me. And so, long story short, this was where like phase 2 of my journey really hit, because I had been praying about my spiritual father situation. I've been praying about my church situation, like not knowing, how to progress next. And so we sit down with her outside. Nick talks to her for a little bit, and then I go to sit down next to her, and she said, "You're married. Do you have many children?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And then she began to tell me my spiritual condition, and it blew me away. And while I was sitting there, it was like just feeling the noose inside of me on fire. Like I felt, and we don't live on feelings. Like that's the Charlie Kirk thing, living on these experiences. This was completely different. This wasn't this like evangelical kumbaya, we're singing songs and getting emotional. There was a deep spiritual thing that was happening to me that I do not even understand. Don't even understand it. Never had it happen before. I always used to say I don't even know if there's God-bearing elders anymore. I've been to monasteries, I've talked to people, but this is something very, very unique. And so I was kind of broken. Some things she said were hard to me. But that's why I was on the journey, right? So I knew that was coming, but then I was like, okay, but what do I do, Mother Markella? And she told me exactly what to do. And she made a phone call, and she said, this is what you're going to do. I want you to go do it. And so we left that place. I mean, that evening we were just like overjoyed. They're like, you guys should stay, but if she lets you go, you can go. And she said, oh, you guys are fine. You can go now. Everything's good. You're fine. Thanks for coming, and blessed us. So again, we're leaving, like we come in there and all this darkness and demonic attack and paranoia, and we leave and we're just like in a completely different space, total peace in our hearts, like just in awe of the whole experience of what happened. And, if you've never had something like that, it's not explainable. You know what I mean? Like there may be people listening to this and you're going, yeah, that's stupid. I don't even know, why was that so important? And like, without being on that journey with us and understanding the battle that we were in and the beauty of what we experienced, there's no way I can like give that to you. I'm just sharing it with you to hope that somewhere you get inspired if you're struggling to go out on your own pilgrimage and to go, just plow forward in the faith and to never quit and to never give up. And even if you're getting beat up by demons, you just keep moving forward. So St. John made a way for us to go there. And that was what that priest had said, that St. John would make a way for all these things that we wanted to happen. So the final stretch, we have to drive through the evening. And the only thing I could say about Platina is, I think honestly, it was a heavier place, right? So we went from like this heavy situation to the beauty of Fort Ross, to the beauty of the Archdiocese, and just being confronted by the Lord, to struggling, to the beauty of Mother Markella and her just grace and her love and her kindness to us, and just the doors opening up. And then going to Platina, it was just a different place, right? Like if you read the biography of Fr Seraphim Rose, like he picked that place because they had no water, because it was so remote that it was impossible for people during that time frame when they first went out there to just, kind of show up. They had a broke down truck. They'd roll down the hill sometime and have people tow them back up. And like before they built that place, he'd go out there and spend a week in that forest, in that wilderness by himself, like struggling ascetically, desiring the death of the flesh, desiring God in a way that, like Father Herman of Alaska, as he wrestled out in the wilderness of Alaska, that kind of asceticism is what he was striving for. And you feel that when you go out there. Like when you're out there in those woods at dark, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm a baby and I'm paranoid, but like you feel not only the specialness of that place, but the spiritual warfare because of what he brought to the world. Like these little, I have so many of these that I got from there, back issues. And as I read them, it's just amazing of what impact. So, Mother Markella, that's Greek, that's Elder Ephraim. Elder Ephraim has done a lot for monasticism, but you go to his monasteries, it's still all in Greek. Like you have to kind of be aligned with the Greek prayers and understand what's happening in the liturgy to really participate. But his goal, Father Seraphim's goal, was to bring, Valam, to bring Russian ascetic Orthodox spiritual practice to America because he knew it was the truth. He knew it was the truth. And so, by the time we got there, I was so tired and so beat up. I just spent the next couple days in prayer, in walking through the woods, in analyzing what we had experienced, in getting what we could from these books to bring back. And some of these things I may share on future podcasts. But it really impacted me how much he had to do with me coming into the church, which to me is proof that he's a saint. Like I can remember reading things of his years prior to me even coming into Orthodoxy and being drawn to what he was teaching, being drawn to who he was, but being like, this Orthodoxy is weird. And so to be able to be out there in the quietness, to be out there where he wrestled and struggled, to see the fruit of that was heavy in one respect because it really just reminded me of my own death, right? Like it's later than you think is what it says on his icon. It's one thing he's known for. It's later than you think, therefore do the works of God. And his life proved that. Like he died at 40, he reposed at 48. All of a sudden he had a stomach ailment, got rushed to the hospital. He had been in so much pain, there was already necrosis. Like he was in this pain in the wilderness, like just resisting it until he collapsed. And he had been suffering for so long, like his intestines had necrosis and they couldn't save him, and he reposed. And yet his work has endured. And to sit there and understand that, even though, I'm just a little bit older than he was, I am not guaranteed tomorrow. None of us are guaranteed a tomorrow future for America. And it was during that period that I sat down with Nick in this book on the drive there, where he really laid out for me, Nick Hinton, how I was being deceived by these politics, how Charlie Kirk is being made a martyr for this new religion that's coming, that's outlined in Orthodoxy and the religion of a future, which is this merger of Christianity, of transhumanism, of UFO and occultism. And it may even have a very Christian in nature appearance. And as I was talking to Nick about, well, what about voting? And what about this? And what about Trump? He just kept telling me, like, there is no political solution for what's happening in America. The only thing you can do is repent and fast and pray and build the church and love the people around you and be Christian and not be sucked into these things. And he told me he was very concerned for me when I was there with the Charlie Kirk thing. And I can tell you that the difference between the two spirits was like night and day. Because one, I left with like this uplifted feeling and this confusion and this desire to want to just merge everybody together, whether they were spreading the truth or not, but we had to come together to save the country. And the other was a true impact into my heart about my life, my need for Christ, a true encounter with the God-bearing elder where there was this intense peace, this sense of God. I just can't explain it. It's not a false peace. It's a serenity. It is a real thing where I was not worried about anything. There was joy in my heart in a deep level. My questions were answered by the Lord night and day. And I'm not saying that to disparage Charlie Kirk. Like, I even cried watching his videos. Call me a sissy, but I really believed he loved the Lord like many evangelicals do in the only way they know how. As I did when I was an evangelical. I wasn't phony. I did not love Jesus. I read the Bible all the time. I just did not have the fullness of the church. God had not brought me into that point of repentance to actually enter the apostolic church. And so I lived a life of suffering and pain with these ups and downs that you get in that church system, where you get these emotional highs and you get, maybe get some little light from God in the gospel because there's some energy of God in that, reading the scripture and implementing it in your life, but it would never bear complete fruit. It wouldn't heal me. The healing never began until I came into the Orthodox Church and I stayed. I battled through being scandalized. I battled through my own pride and selfishness. I battled through thinking I was important enough for somebody needed to come and teach me everything, and my loneliness, and then, meeting good people and getting catechesis. But it was a process that I realized I can't leave this church because it is the true faith. But I'm suffering and I'm struggling and I don't know what to do. And that had been my cry for this, very long period of time. But I began to see my life heal. And that's what brought my wife into the church. For 8 years, she was like, I'm not coming to your church. I'm a Christian. We've seen a lot of things in the evangelical world that hurt her. And she's like, I'm just not going to another church. My priest said, just love her, which I did. But as she began to see those things change in my life, and she's like, well, you're just getting older. And I was like, no, honey, listen, I've always wanted to be healed of these things. The desire of my heart was always wanting to be faithful to Jesus and the gospel, and to live a life that was pleasing to God, and to be free of these demons of addiction and these things that beat me up so bad. And then they began to just heal. One day, I just didn't smoke cigarettes anymore. One day, some compelling thing that was governing my life and putting me in slavery, I had no joy in and didn't care. It was a healing like that. It scabbed over and it healed. I was no longer being pressed into these things, which I think even the journey of the pilgrimage to being so triggered in the beginning of this was, again, God ripping open a wound and healing it, healing. So watch out if you go on a pilgrimage seeking healing. You might get it, but it might not be the way that you think it is. So anyways, and that was like the capstone right there. I mean, there was another huge spiritual battle after, one that really knocked me in the dirt to really humble me. I mean, humble me and show me that despite all of these experiences, I am barely a Christian. But I believe, God brought Nick into my life to show me these things because I was being left and right and sideways. And it is a great deception. And we're going to see this more and more, this revival that people are talking about. It's not a revival. It's not a revival. If it's not, what Fr Seraphim said is, if it's not pushing you into embracing the cross and denying yourself and death to this world and ascetic practice and the true faith, the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, and prayer, then it's a false fire. Doesn't matter how it makes you feel. This whole thing's going to be about how we feel. And well, this person got brought into the church because of this experience or this vision or this mysticism or this charismatic chaos, and it's all about these experiences that are contrary to the church and to scripture and to reality, to compromise our faith. And that was the longest 10 days of my life. I'm telling you. But I came out with so many riches. And there were so many things I wasn't sharing. I was praying for everybody that asked for prayer. I brought your prayers before the saints, and I hope that you saw the result of that in your life. I encourage you to do it yourself and find a monastery close to you. Find a saint, some relics close to you, and make your own pilgrimage. But the biggest draw I got out of this, besides Mother Markella leading me to a man that can do spiritual surgery on my heart for the areas that still need healing, because there is a certain level that's hard of healing and growth to come to without a spiritual father. But we're lacking spiritual fathers in this age, that even Fr Seraphim talked about. That until we find that person that God brings to us that can truly work in our life, then we read the fathers, we fast, we pray, we press into the church, we confess, we take communion, we do all that we can. We don't give up. It's taken me 10 years to even get to this point, to where I feel like God has answered that, and I'm going exactly in the direction that he wants me to go, so that he can heal my heart. And then he realigned me, because, if you go back to some of my older podcasts, that's why I quit for a season. Because I know politics are not the answer. I know that Trump is not going to save us. I think many of you are seeing this. I believe our country has been overthrown, and it's being ran by the people that are going to bring forward this antichrist religion, and those who reject it will become enemies of the state. And it may not happen right now. There may be some event that's coming that's really going to shock people, to where it kind of like 9/11. I was a 9/11 activist for many years, did a couple documentaries. And when we first started doing activism after 9/11, it was like in 2004, I think. Like, we were handing out DVDs, we were going to festivals and warning people, trying to get the facts out there. I had, law enforcement threaten my life, calling me a jihadi and saying I should be tortured and murdered. Like, it was scary stuff. Now you tell people 9/11's an inside job. It's like, of course it was, or whatever. But it was because that thing was so shocking to people's consciousness that to even confront the narrative, they would just be full of rage and anger. And I think we've woken up to some degree, but in another degree we haven't, because we have the same weird polarization, to where we have huge masses of people that facts and truth have zero impact on. Zero. And we're being swung back and forth. They talk about the woke right and woke left. I don't know. That's probably another psyop. That's one thing. Everything I talk to Nick about, he's like, it's psyop. That's psyop. That's psyop. He's like, it's meant to keep you confused. It's meant to get you to a point. That's why they allow Candace Owens and these other people. They're all working for the same spiritual end, which is, if you can't tell what the truth is, it's to bring you to a point, this occult initiation, where you know no truth. That's your initiation into their occult system. Now you can't tell between what's right or wrong. You don't know who the bad guys are or who the good guys are. You start making compromises because the people that you thought were the good guys are doing things that are outrageous. Things that you're like, what are you doing? This isn't what we voted on. But it's because this golden age that they're talking about is not what you think it is, and what I think it is. And the one thing that we can do to prepare, that is the main thing, is to repent and be baptized in the name of Jesus Christ for the remission of sins, and you shall receive the Holy Spirit. But you are baptized into the church that Jesus founded, the apostolic faith, and get that protection and that understanding and that mind of the Holy Fathers, to where we can engage this world by being truly and thoroughly orthodox, and loving people, and building the church, and teaching them the faith, and teaching them noetic healing on how to get healed. Because if we just have political solutions, if we just have all this freedom propaganda without freedom, we're building the prison that they're going to put us in. Think about this. And I'm not going to get all political, but think about this. Doge. Why don't we hear about it anymore? Like for months and months and months, we heard about all this money we're saving and all these things that they were doing. And then it just went quiet. Why? Because they went into Social Security, they went into all of these government agencies, and they downloaded every single person's file, ran through it. They did cancel a bunch of programs, but they put that in their AI systems. The one thing also this pilgrimage taught me is that I don't need to live in fear. It doesn't matter. These things must be so. That's what Jesus said. They must be so. He said, when you see all of these things happening, rejoice because your redemption draws near. It doesn't mean we don't grieve for people getting harmed. It doesn't mean that we're not saddened about the state of the world, but we're not driven by their propaganda, their AI machinery that knows everything about you and know how to push you and to trigger you to where you're being controlled by their algorithm. Because that's what we've headed towards. I mean, look at X right now. It's being ran by Grok. What gets promoted is what the AI wants promoted. You are seeing the mind of the AI in real time. And it's going to get worse and it's going to go faster. And so, that was a long story. I got quite a few viewers on here watching this, and I know it's kind of all over the place. I don't know how to share the full experience. It was grueling and painful and horrible and beautiful and blessed and amazing and humbling and crazy. All at once. But it showed me that God hears our prayers. Oh, and the final day, again, I went in tears to the relics of St. John and really learned through this trip about what a powerful saint he is. And I'm going to finish this stream with a story about him. And if anything, if you're in America, you can go venerate St. John. Yes, they do the liturgy in Russian, but you can just go venerate him. You don't even have to stay there for the liturgy. It's open all day long. Or you can sit in the liturgy and see if you can understand it if you don't know Russian, Slavic. But he is an amazing, amazing saint. And I believe his prayers were driving this, as well as St. Nikiforos, like to be brought without even knowing to him when I venerate him in my chapel was just mind-blowing. But it showed me in those periods of darkness when I was in fear, when me and Nick were triggering each other with our experiences and the paranoia that the occult and conspiracy theories and just activism apart from a spiritual life actually bring. It's like a darkness that's in you, and you suspect everybody around you. You get fearful, right? In the long run, I don't know what that guy was, but I talked to his spiritual father because I asked to do that, and his spiritual father contacted me. And I don't know if it was just a spiritual thing to initiate this healing or if something more sinister was happening, but it showed me that when in the presence of the saints and filled with the Spirit of God, and your nous is alive and you're energized by the things of God, there is no fear. There is no anger. There is no hatred. That is the healing of the world right there. And for me to learn how to stay in that space, I think Elder Ephraim, there are stories I read where he would talk about not losing your grace, learning to keep that blessing and guarding yourself. That when you know you're in that place of communion with God and you have the prayer coming out of your life and you feel His grace and you're operating in peace, how to preserve that. And many of us don't know how to do it because we don't have examples except by the saints to go and read what they said and taught. And hopefully you have a spiritual father that can help guide you through that. But I began to taste that when I wasn't in that space, this heaviness, this anger, this frustration, this failure, this sinfulness, this pride would come out, right? But then he would bring me back in, and then the peace would be there. And it was like he was showing us the dichotomy. Like this Charlie Kirk, yeah, he was definitely, murdered for what he believed in. I don't think we'll ever get the truth. Just like we won't get the truth about Epstein, we won't get that. No one will be punished for the vaccines, because all of these things are part of the program. Is to keep the carrot dangling in front of you so you're spinning on your hamster wheel, fighting for things that don't matter, because many of them are all in on it together. They know where they're taking us to. And it's to the religion of the future, to enthrone the Antichrist and join us to this transhumanist AI system, or whatever it is they're going to do. And it's coming quickly. And so, in retrospect, I saw God giving me his grace and putting me right in the middle of that Charlie Kirk thing. Nobody could have made that happen. I got a press pass, and in there was secret. Like, it was crazy. And I even posted about that. Like, I was like, this is amazing, right? Like, God just opened this door and was like, here, go sit. Go sit right in the middle, and I want you to experience this. And you're going to go to a real saint, a real martyr, a God-bearing elder, and you're going to experience how the kingdom is different, how my kingdom is different. And I can say this, that there were some other things that I was struggling with in my life that I haven't struggled with since I've gotten home. Like, there's been another layer of healing that, and I'm not boasting in this, I'm in awe of it. Like, I'm like, each step forward shows me that this is the true faith, that this is the real reality, not this pseudo online crazy reality that they're creating for us to keep our noose all tangled up in our mind all on the things of the world. So I thank all of you for your prayers and sharing the journey with me. Like, a lot of you commented, people messaged me, people asked for prayer. People told me how valuable it was to them that I shared my experience. Some people got mad that I shared my experience. Like, why you always got to share all this stuff that you do? And I'm like, it used to be common practice when people went on pilgrimages. Like, we have a 4th century narration of a pilgrimage to Jerusalem because it's to inspire other people, right? It's to tell a testimony, say, go, seek holy things, seek God-bearing elders. Don't give up no matter how bad you're wounded or scandalized within the church. Don't give up if you feel like you're isolated, because you're never alone. The saints are there. The angels are there. The church is available. You can tap into it. You don't even need a physical parish. You do need a physical parish. But I mean, if you don't have one, you can still tap in to the apostolic church through the saints and through fasting and through the calendar and through trying to connect with other Orthodox around the world, because we have, something good in the internet where we can connect with each other, where we can share these things that 20 years ago we didn't have, and now we have all of these wonderful books in English. And the church in America is beginning to thrive, and we're going to need more priests, and we're going to need more monastics. And I can't wait. It's an ongoing joke between me and my friends. I told them, I'm going to go sit on a pillar. But I'm married, but I can't. But I'd love to see a true ascetic stylite in America. Like, it would just shock the conscience. They wouldn't even know what to do. They wouldn't even, like a God-bearing elder on a pillar for the next 20 years. That would be beautiful. Lord, may it happen for reals. But anyways, so I thank you all. And I hope this testimony of this journey, I just wanted to share it with all of you that were following. And I want to warn people that this pseudo-false revival that's trying to merge Mormonism and Judaism and all these other isms to Christianity because we're fighting some common enemy, whatever they're bringing together, whether it's a UFO disclosure or some kind of massive terrorist attack, who knows? Or maybe none of that's going to happen and they're just keeping us in anxiety and fear. Disconnect from that stuff. Disconnect. And understand that if it's not rooted in the church, if it's not rooted in the lives or the teachings of the saints, if it's not pushing us towards asceticism and self-denial and the love of the Lord and love of our neighbor through the holy things, right? Through the Eucharist, through the liturgy, through pilgrimages, to build up human beings and unify them with God and with Christ, then it's a false fire. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if fire would have came down from heaven in that Charlie Kirk thing. If you look at the end result, it's not pushing people to the true faith. It's watering down even more. It's politicizing things even more. And so I repent. I didn't go and delete all those posts because I try to be as transparent as I can be. I have deleted posts in the past because they were just disgraceful in my own mind when I shouldn't have said things that I said, and I thought that was appropriate to remove. But I'm not removing those. I want to be reminded of how easy that deception can grab a hold of us, and to be reminded how true and beautiful the Orthodox faith is, and how different it's just different. I can't explain it to you. That's why I always tell people, like, I can't explain to you. I can only ask you to come and see. Come pray with me. Come to my church with me. Come on a pilgrimage with me, but don't record me. I'm going to share this story. All right. So this is from the Orthodox Word number 111. 111. If you saw my post earlier, you know why that's funny to me. All right. It says, more help from Archbishop John. Dear Reverend Fathers, while living at the St. Herman of Alaska Monastery in February 1982, I accompanied Higher Monk Seraphim of thrice blessed memory to Redding, California, where he gave a lecture at the St. Herman of Alaska Winter Pilgrimage and celebrated the Divine Liturgy. The following day, on the feast of the Meeting of the Lord at the Surety of Sinners Mission Parish. Shortly after the liturgy on that day of the feast, Father Seraphim sent me together with several brothers to buy supplies and groceries for the monastery, entrusting me with $150. Having brought a full shopping cart to the check stand, I suddenly realized that I didn't have the money. I was shocked. I felt terrible. I had lost the money. And proceeded to blame and reproach everyone and everything else vocally and mentally. That's kind of like my story, like reproaching people, totally out of the spirit. It's my own mistakes. Vocally and mentally. We phoned the church and Father Seraphim told us to return. When we had parked in the driveway, I started walking towards the church and met Father Seraphim alone halfway, and he said, "You have it right there," pointing to my chest. Archbishop John told me. You didn't even think of praying to him, did you? With self-assurance, I felt my chest, and with simultaneous joy and shame, I found the money in a pocket, which I thought I had certainly searched, and startled, I replied that indeed I hadn't prayed to Vladika John. Father Seraphim then comforted me, explaining that after we had finished speaking on the phone, he had gone immediately to the church on the left side, of which there is a large portrait of Archbishop John, together with his mitre and several other portraits and relics associated with his life and person, and there he had asked Vladika John to help us find the money. Archbishop John informed him that I had the money right in my pocket, right under my nose. Thus, through the intercession of God's righteous ones, a sure trial and a temptation were transformed into the revelation of the mystery of holiness and grace. St. John, pray for us. I know if you're a Protestant, that prayer annoys you because you're like, pray to Jesus alone. And I understand where you're coming from, but you got to think of it like this. They're not dead, they're alive. And if you are in a crisis, would you go in your church to the person, that was struggling the most with sin, that their life was a complete train wreck, and entrust them with your prayers and say, hey, will you pray for me? And I'm not talking about this in a judgmental manner, but I mean, like someone that you really know is struggling with their own prayer life. Would you go to them and say, I need you to help me with this situation where you pray? No. You would go to the person in the church that you felt like had some spiritual victory and that was walking according to the gospel and you would say, please help me. Please pray for me. Here's my situation. And you'd lay it before them and you would seek their counsel. And that's what we're doing. That is exactly what we're doing. And so that final day, that's what I did. And I went back to the relics of St. John in tears and really beat to the ground. And I think part of that, because of the experience that happened the night before, that I'm not even going to reiterate. I've told enough stories. But I think I had to come out of that experience humbled, so I wouldn't, be too full of myself, but to understand that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Still a lot of work that needs to be done. So I hope that blessed you. And, I'm slowly just seeking the Lord in, my broadcasting, in that there's many things in my heart that I'd like to share, but I also want to make sure that I'm in the right space to do that. And I know that in the church today, and that's why my X is noetic healing, that we truly need noetic healing. And with the influx of converts and people that have had experiences like mine where they've had trouble finding a spiritual father, they've felt disconnected in their parishes, or maybe they couldn't even get connected to a good parish because of distance or travel or their work or whatever, to kind of put that information out there, but also to warn people that this religion of the future is coming quickly. And I would encourage you, if you have not read this book, even if you're not Orthodox, I'd encourage you to go read it and pray. Pray for God to show you the truth in these things. Maybe pray to Fr Seraphim. Just try it. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm not kidding, actually. But, and reread this book. And I'm going through it. I may do some podcasts here in the future going over some of this material. I'm definitely going to be sharing more stories from the Orthodox Word, because I think Fr Seraphim's mission on this earth, that he put this information into our hands, should not die out. Recently they said they're going to stop printing the Orthodox Word at the monastery so they could focus on other books. And so these are it, right? That time in history is gone, but we have this huge volume of great teaching of the Russian God-bearing fathers. And may it bless America. May that bless America. May that make America great. God-bearing fathers and the truth of the Orthodox Church. So feel free to send me a message if you have any questions, or you want to tell me I'm a loser, or you want some prayer, or you have your own questions about your own journey and you think I might be able to have some insight, or have a question that I can answer. Feel free to send me a message. But until next time, have a good evening and pray for me, and I'll pray for you, and go